It is difficult to fathom the sheer devastation of flash floods. Occurring as a result of heavy rainfall, rapid snow thaw, city drains overflowing, or dam failures, flash floods can reach a height of 20 feet, severely damaging anything in its path. If you are thinking that because you live in a city, you have less of a threat, think again. Disturbingly, cities are particularly vulnerable to flash floods due to the predominant impermeable surfaces, such as asphalt, and the lack of natural drainage systems. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Preview of Tomorrow. I am your host, Mike Lake. In this preview, I will be talking to Esteban Canepa, the CTO of Sadeem, a startup that is addressing the prominent threat of flash floods in urban areas by providing an early warning system for this fast and unpredictable disaster.
Innovation, resiliency, discovery. Join Mike Lake, President and CEO of Leading Cities, as we explore the technologies shaping the possibilities of our future with a preview of tomorrow.
Hello, and welcome, Esteban. Thank you so much for joining us. And once again, I want to thank all of our listeners and viewers out there. I'd like to introduce you all to Esteban Canepa, the CTO of Sadeem, a startup that uses novel sensing technologies to provide early warning and monitoring systems for flash floods in urban areas. So Esteban, before we really get into this challenge of flash flooding, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to focus on this issue.
Thank you very much, Mike. I really appreciate the invitation. I'm a big fan of podcasts, so it's a pleasure to be here. And well, why floods? Basically, I was born in a state in Mexico called Tabasco. It's in the south regions of the country, and it's a state that always struggles with floods. Every year there is a severe flood, but particularly there was an event that kind of defined what I was going to be doing. That was in 2007. I was in undergrad at that time, and I was living in a city like 10 hours away from my hometown, and there was a severe flood. It was like one of the most severe ones that have happened in recent years, and so I managed to get some food and things for people that were affected, and I took them with a group of people to the affected areas, and I saw firsthand what flood incidents can create in a city, the impact, and all the social and economical impacts of a flood. Like I saw them firsthand, and that event marked me a lot. And then I moved to Saudi Arabia as a postgrad student, and then there was a flood also here in Saudi Arabia, and it was also a severe one. That was 2010, and that's when my research started shaping towards that, because it was a severe event and I saw them firsthand, and that's how everything really started. The seed in my mind.
You know, you've just brought me back here in the U.S. to Hurricane Katrina, which, now so many years ago. But hearing your story reminded me, I did something similar. I collected housewares, furniture and supplies all around Massachusetts, and drove it all down to New Orleans that had been so affected by Katrina. And I was welcomed by the local government there, and it just so happened that my timing was such that, and this was a few months after the actual flooding had occurred, but the lower Ninth Ward of New Orleans was being reopened for the first time. And so I was one of the first people invited into that area. And I've never seen anything like it. I mean, at 6'2", I was the tallest thing standing in what was once a neighborhood. There was just nothing left but debris. So It's amazing the impact that floods can have, and so let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, I think a lot of people don't realize, just how damaging floodwaters can be. I've seen that, just 2 feet of flood water moving at a normal flash flood pace, which is like 9 feet or so per second, uh, is literally enough to sweep vehicles away, move 100-pound rocks, or uproot trees and level buildings. I mean, you're talking about complete devastation. Um, Tell us a little bit more about flash flooding and how it occurs even in urban areas.
Well, it's true. Floods are the most common natural hazard nowadays in the whole planet. It's as simple as that. Just to give you an idea, from 2010 to 2019, 46% of all disasters triggered by natural hazards were actually floods.
Mm.
So it's like almost half of all the disasters that are taking place nowadays in the world, it's a flood, and they're affecting our urban areas. And the impact is huge. That's basically what I saw during that event, and what you also have seen firsthand. I mean, if we translate that to numbers, it's huge. Just to give you an example, talking about recent years, to 2019, which is like one year we studied a lot. Just in the first half of that year, flood losses were estimated at around 33 billion US dollars. That's just 6 months of one year, uh, globally. And I mean, if you start doing the math of that, uh, you realize that we have a severe problem on that.
Hmm.
And keep in mind that when they affect a city and urban areas, that's where most of the people is living and is going to be living. By 2030, 65% of global population will be on cities. So that also brings kind of that challenge into perspective. And so that's what we have observed, and that's basically what the numbers say about that. And also the other aspect is the frequency of these events, how they are appearing more and more often. Just to give you an example, the global trend nowadays of all the disasters, including human-induced disasters and natural-induced, if we analyze the numbers, we see that there is a trend in that every year, most of the disasters are coming from a natural trigger. Um, from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it was around 73%. Now we are around 83%. So it's getting more and more severe, and it's getting more and more frequent. That is the challenge that we're facing, and that's in perspective what we are currently seeing in the numbers. And you just have to see the news. There is always a country affected by a flood, by an incident like that, and the numbers are there. And we have to also keep in mind that um, we need to prepare for that, but basically we have to call them as they are disasters, but they're not natural disasters. We have to keep also that in mind. Uh, they are just triggered by a natural hazard, but it's a combination of the hazard and the vulnerability and exposure and the lack of capacity. That is really what it translates to a disaster, and that's kind of the problem we are facing nowadays, and we will face them more and more often in the years to come.
So you're really talking about an increasing number of these incidences, an increase in the intensity of these incidences, and an increase in loss of these incidences as a result. And certainly in an urban center, the situation just made so much worse by the amount of our land that is covered, whether it's a building or sidewalk or pavement of a road. So it leaves little place for the water to eventually be absorbed. And standing water creates another hole challenge and damage. So clearly this is an issue. There's also, I mean, we have to address the fact that there's also a tremendous loss of life and when these incidents, or can be a tremendous loss of life when these incidences occur. So tell us, what can people, communities be doing to better prepare and to better be warned of such an incident?
So the first thing is to realize the situation, that like understand their context of. We have observed many urban areas, and each one of them has a different context, a different reason why a flood could happen. That is also important to notice, and it's to understand that, to really realize which is the position in which they are located from a flood perspective. And the next step is to engage. There has to be a lot of engagement from a social perspective to understand what are the protocols to react when such a thing happens, such an incident is going to take place or is taking place. That is also important from like, I am a citizen also, and this is the steps that we have to follow. But also there is the other part of how can we prevent it, and I think that is key. How can we start reacting faster and better to these kind of hazards that are appearing, and that's basically where technology start appearing, and it's vital. Because we need to prepare, we need to create early warning systems and emergency response teams that are optimized by technology. This is the key aspect of that. To give you a number, and why is this so important? According to a World Bank study, every dollar we invest globally in prevention, we can save up to $9 in recovery from an incident. So that study reveals that we have to invest more and more into such a thing. And basically that is what nowadays is called climate adaptation. We have two aspects, right? Climate mitigation, which is reduction of the emissions, and climate adaptation is really, okay, how can we react better to what is currently taking place, right? We're working in reducing the emissions and all this, but also how can we reduce the impacts, social, economical, and all that. And to put also things into perspective, there is a study that they have a study, right? How much investment do we need to have a better adaptation to climate? And what they have come up with is like, it will require an estimated of $50 billion annually invested on 50 developing countries to meet the adaptation requirements. This annual investment for the coming decade, for example, to 2030, where we have set some goals and all that based on agreements that are in place nowadays. So this is the amount of investment that is required, and is required, of course, on infrastructure, on technology, on social preparations, social, I would say, engagement, so the solutions can actually be triggered properly to any context.
So you had mentioned the technology side of this, and that's really where Sadeem comes into play. So for our audience members, please explain to us in simple terms, what is it that Sadeem does, and how does that, what's the impact ultimately to a community or to an individual?
Yes, well, I would like to ask the people to imagine how would we to have your smartphone and out of a sudden receive an alert that a flood is coming within the next 6 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, or even more than that. That piece of information will have a direct impact on how affected you will be. From the fact that you will probably move to a safer place, you will probably minimize the economical impact that flood is going to happen, is going to have on you and your family, and also the governments can react better. That is basically what we do. That is in a nutshell what we do. It's basically alert with a, a window of hours, and we're working to enhance that amount of time. How do we do it? We basically use sensors as our core technology that are placed on critical areas affected by floods. These sensors are basically transmitting real-time information of the flood situation 24/7, and with that information, we can do estimations of the impact that it's going to have, the amount of water, and we can be its prevention, but also mitigation during the flood, right? Is the two things. So what we're looking forward is to reduce the impact. That is the key, and that is done, and that is how we apply it. Now, our core work is on the sensing technologies, but also we are working with partners to engage and enhance the overall solution for flood mitigation, which involves modeling, weather prediction, and all that. Really, to target floods and to address floods, we have to take a holistic approach. That is key. That is vital. There is no single solution. That is what we do.
So, first of all, is it fair to say that essentially what you're doing is creating the flood equivalent of what already exists for earthquakes in terms of monitoring and warning systems to save lives and minimize economic impact to communities and families?
Exactly. Yes. And the importance of the time. It's really something we have to consider, because every hour that you add to the warning, it's literally impact that you're reducing. Estimated that every hour can have like a 10% impact on the reduction on the impact that flood incident is going to generate. So that's basically why we're working so hard on that.
Well, Esteban, I want to thank you for that work, because you're literally saving lives, and that we just can't commend you enough for that effort. But there is also that economic impact, and no survivor wants to deal with the tremendous loss, economic loss, not to mention personal valuables and memories and whatnot that get washed away. So listen, I want to thank you. Our time goes by so fast every time. It shocks me. But, in conclusion here, for those who are interested in learning more about this amazing technology, this ability to be better prepared and warned, how do our listeners and viewers learn more about Sadeem?
Yeah, they can enter our website. Is sadeemwss.com. That's SADEEMWSS.com. And there they will find all our social media accounts, and they can contact us directly. And yeah, we'll be happy to talk to anyone. We have projects in different regions of the world, so we understand the context of how flood affects differently. And yeah, we're looking forward.
Well, as we said, there's pretty much nowhere to escape that will completely protect you from a flood. So this is something that we all should be mindful of. And thank you again for joining us today. I appreciate you spending some time with us. And thank you for tuning in to this episode of Preview of Tomorrow. Listeners like you are essential to advancing our efforts to drive resiliency and sustainability for all. I ask that you give us a rating on Apple Podcasts or whichever streaming platform you prefer. Your feedback helps us to grow and share these brief previews of what life in the future can be. In addition to thanking our guest today, I want to thank Peter Roy and Demetria Bridges for making this podcast possible. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and encourage others to also join us each week in previewing the possibilities of tomorrow.
Preview of Tomorrow is brought to you by Leading Cities, a global nonprofit driving resilience and sustainability for all by unleashing the potential of the world's cities. Join them at leadingcities.org.